Welcome to the Fusion Mastery course. In this lesson, we'll be talking about modeling. After completing this lesson, you'll be able to create a solid using Extrude, create a cut using Extrude.
Now that we've got some of our sketching out of the way, it's time to create some solid geometry. But we're going to start with another FSAE steering wheel file.
First, we want to go to New Design from File, navigate to your Fusion Mastery Lesson 19 dataset folder, and select FSAE Steering Wheel 3.
This is going to contain our component, as well as the sketches for main plate, shaft pattern, and one called spline. The first thing that we want to do is activate this component. We then are going to hide the spline and hide the shaft pattern sketches. This leaves only the main plate sketch active and visible. Next, we want to go to our Create dropdown and select Extrude. Also note that Extrude has a shortcut key E. We can also hit S on the keyboard and Extrude will be on here by default. And we can use our right-click menu to navigate to Create and select Extrude. Any of these options are going to be valid. It just depends on how you want to access your tools. As we move forward in our course, I'll start making less notes about accessing tools and simply tell you which tools to get. In this case, the profile that we want is going to be our main plate sketch. Note that these four areas are left open. On the screen, we're then going to select and hold down the left mouse button on this arrow and pull it up. Once we pull it up, notice that the dimension is highlighted here. We're going to hit 0.375, and this brings us back to a 3/8 thick plate. Let's take a look at some of the various options. We can change where the sketch is going to start the extrude, in this case the profile plane, but you can also offset it or select from another object. In our case, we don't have any additional objects. It makes sense to start from the profile plane. We can also dictate whether or not we want to extrude one direction, two directions, or symmetric in both. We can determine whether or not we want to manually enter a value for distance, select to another object to extrude to, or through all, which will take it through every object. The distance and taper amount, and then the operation type. In our case, we want to select a new body because we already have an active component. It'll place the body within the active component. If you're starting on a new file, you can also create a new component on the fly. Go ahead and select OK. And now we've made our solid extrude. And notice that by default, the main plate sketch is now hidden. We can turn it back on at any point in time if we need it for additional operations, but we're going to go ahead and leave it off. The next thing that we want to do is extrude the shaft pattern. One thing you'll note that is a little bit difficult is sometimes selecting through solid geometry can be tough. So let's first select Extrude, and note that as we try to select these, it's trying to select the top face. All the way on the right-hand side of our toolbar, we have a Select option, and notice that we have selection filters all the way at the bottom. We can dictate whether or not we want to select just sketches, and that will allow us to focus on just these sketch profiles. In this case, of course, we could also just rotate the model over and select them from the bottom. From here, I'm going to hold down the left mouse button on this arrow and pull it up. By default, the preview will show red because it's cutting solid geometry away. We could also make it join to create solid, create new bodies for each of these instances, or even a new component. If we select intersect, the resulting body left will be everywhere that this sketch extruded intersects the original. In our case, we actually want to cut. For our distance, we're going to select through all and say OK. Let's go ahead and activate the top level, and let's save our file as FSAE Steering Wheel 3. I do want to make a quick note about versions and the differences between how we handled FSAE Steering Wheel 2 and 3. When we started a new design from File with FSAE 3, we didn't save it initially, we simply started modeling. With FSAE2, we saved it first and then started creating our sketches. The difference here, if we expand our data panel, is that FSAE2 has 2 versions, while FSAE3 only has 1. It's a good idea whenever you start a new model, whether it's from a file or starting by uploading a model, to save the initial version before you get started making any changes. That way you can always go back to the original. Another quick note, the gear icon in the data panel will allow us to change the view to set it as a list. Because we're going to be creating multiple files with the same initial file name, FSAE steering wheel, this will help us figure out which version we're looking at. We can also determine which one is going to be sorted by updated type or by name. For right now, I'm going to sort by name, but later on we might change it to last updated so that the most current version is all the way at the top. Let's go ahead and close our data panel for now and move on to the next steps.